So, amid the reinventing, when the nature was reinventing, and the grandmoms and granddads using Zoom technology to get connected and all. So, in this scenario, I present my perspective on India after COVID. Till last month, like last 30 days, we were just discussing about CAA, NRC, the Delhi riot, and all those things. Suddenly, a word, Corona, came from the scientist lexicon to the common man's dictionary. So while I was just reflecting, I was going down the memory lane, and I was just thinking that is this scenario similar to the what I had faced? Does this how much does it even compare to it? And all those things. That's the time when AIM was also the Alumni Association was starting off with the webinar series and all, and that's how it happened. I'll cover it in around 17 slides. The first 2 slides are all about me. Well, these slides I have put up because to thank all my bosses, super bosses, mentors, Nikhil, Sandeep, and all who have actually helped me transform my thinking process, develop my perspective, and all those things. So my presentation is divided into 5 parts. First is the perspective, wherein I'm trying to compare the lockdown or the 1.5 months of the quarantine, self-quarantine that we are all going through, the kind of experience that I had around 2004 and 5 in the high altitude. So that's my perspective. So I wanted to compare both the situations. The second part, I would be covering how the world is reinventing around this entire COVID-19. The third would be the new opportunities that would emerge out of this. Then the role of the Indian Army in the national security and the role in the COVID-19 and all. And then the new beginnings or the new normal that we all have to go through post this crisis. The first is the perspective one. So in the perspective, you can see 3 pictures. And in these 3 pictures, if you see, I am in the middle in the blue jacket. The picture towards my left is the Tiger Hill. And the picture towards at the background where I'm standing is a Pakistani post. And if you see, the distance would be, the crow fly would be 600 meters or something, height to height. And towards my right is the picture of the Dras Valley. Now, where is actually Dras? Now, entire J&K is divided into Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh. So in the Ladakh, there are 2 parts. One is the Leh Ladakh, and the second is the Kargil Ladakh. So in the Kargil Ladakh, there's Kargil is a district. There's a place called Dras, which is also known as, which comes right after the Zojila Pass, which is also known as the gateway to Leh. So the things apart from the army post and everything to see is Mashko Valley, which is like really very beautiful valley, and Amarnath Temple. There's a way through that Dras as well, and then is Kargil Memorial, and all these other places. It's a narrow valley. Dras is a narrow valley, and is the second most coldest inhabited place in the world after Siberia. So the temperature drops up to around -50 over there. So anyone who has to be there has to be acclimatized like for 3 stages, and has to pass through 4 or 5 at least medical tests to actually spend the time in the post and all. Now Dras has a peculiarity. In terms of the meters, the mountains are like, it starts from 3,300 meters and all. In the feet, it would be 10,000 feet to 32,000 feet. The entire Dras sector. Whereas the Leh starts from around 3,500. Siachen starts from around, it's an extra high altitude, which starts from around 5,600 to 6,000 meters and above. Now, all these positions are, if you compare the Leh as well as the Dras is much colder because it's a narrow valley. The air gets trapped, and that's how the temperature also is like -50 and all. So if I compare the same thing when I was there and when now I am here in the lockdown and all, I would like to ask you guys, like, what is the lockdown experience? So most of you will say it's kind of quite monotonous. It's the same thing. We want to go out and everything. So while I was hearing all these things and while I was just talking to a lot of my friends and all those things, that's when I realized the perspective. 17,500 feet at minus 50. Here I'm at home, comfortable. The aircon is on. The temperatures are not that extremes. The time duration that I spent in this lockdown is almost a month. And the time duration that I spent in Leh or the Dras is around 5 months. If you ask me whether there is electricity, no, there is no electricity. There is no eating out. The choices are quite limited. As in, you can have either the roti sabji or sabji rotis. Like here, you have that vitamin water or the berry flavored and all. There you get, there's a drum which you use it for getting kerosene. In the evening, in the morning, you use the same jerry can to warm up water. And then you put chlorine tablets into it and you drink from it. There are no friends or colleagues to chat with. It's quite an isolated post. When you imagine 17,500 feet, it's always covered in snow. It has 3 stages. It's very difficult to climb also, and that thing. The final stage is you need to use ropes to climb it with your stuff and all those things. And it's so narrow that at the top it would be around 300 feet only, as in the space. So that means there is not much of space for people. So that means there may be very few people to man that post apart from an officer and men. The lockdown in this situation, if I see it, it's with the family. The chances of survival is known. My food choices are limited. I'm stuck at home. I'm doing some office work, and then Netflix is there. Then the Hotstar is there. Then I compare the other things like the communication. Yeah, here I can call up anyone. I can do Zoom calls with anyone and all. There, the communication is like kind of quite tough. There is quite tough. As in, there is one satellite phone, which is like which works at sometimes, which doesn't work. In different weather conditions, it doesn't work at all. Maybe once in a month, you can make a call to your parents and all. So one of the incident was like when I was using this to make a call. So I told my mom that, yeah, I will give you a call and all. So you need to adhere to the instructions. So the voice echoes and all. So she said, yeah, yeah, everything I understood and all. So I went there, I give her a call, and then it was like, hello. So hello was like echoing like 4 times. And then suddenly she was like, yeah, don't call me when you are drunk. So she knows that I'm in Dras, but she doesn't know that there are posts, there are like tough posts, you need to climb higher and all. So these are some of the instances of the communication that you can't do much. In the summer, there is another instance which I'll cover later. So you can't actually watch movies out there, as in there is no TV out there, there is no electricity, there are no toilets out there. You can't change your clothes. Whatever clothes you carry, you have to throw them. You can't carry it down also, because by the time you are getting down, um, you're just used to that 300 square meters space. So while you're getting down, you're like you need to really work out a month prior to it. You need to throw your clothes and everything. You can't take bath. You have to just take bath once in a month. So you can't use any soaps or liquid soaps or anything. You need to just get into using Dettol for taking a shower or something. In all these situations, you have to keep the morale of the men who are with you high. The morale of the men who are at the base also quite high. Our troops are like one of the best in this world because in all these adverse situations also, all they can think is, let's go a little bit ahead, let's capture a little bit more of space. You see that post, let's go take that when they are sleeping and all. So our troops are really nice. They are one of the best in this world. Here, if I compare the situation, you can reach out to your family, as in It's a fight for your family, neighbors, and friends. You have proper house and bedding and all. You have to also keep your family motivated like the same way, but yeah, there it is quite different. Now, when I was mentioning the instructions of the satellite phone to my mom and all, so there was, and during the summers, there's also a line that is the STD line that you can connect to your, that gets connected to 70 kilometers ahead. There is an STD booth, the army runs it. You can get connected and you can make calls. That guy will dial you, and that guy becomes a kind of an interpreter or a operator at times. So I was just calling one of my the girlfriends at that time, and then when I said hello, so she couldn't hear it. This guy was translating, "Saab, hello, bol rahe hain," and all. And while you can ending the conversation, while you're telling that, okay, fine, yeah, you take care and love you and all. So this guy is actually on the call and he's actually transmitting it back to her. Yeah, saab bol rahe ki, yeah, love you, mem saab bol rahe ki ye. So this is the kind of the communication that you have there. So you can't, you don't have anything apart from it. So you depend on people because they hear everything what you're speaking, wherever you are speaking. That's the communication. The view from the post is super breathtaking because you have towards the Indian side the Tiger Hill, and the Tiger Hill has a Pariyonka Jheel which is quite near to it and all. So the legend was like if you see anyone during between 1 to 2 taking bath, you'll go blind and all. But you follow the legends in the mountains and also. So Tiger Hill was breathtaking, but if you see getting up in the morning at minus 35, it is dark, gloomy, there is nothing, sun comes up for 3 to 4 hours and all. It's quite tough to actually stay there and enjoy the views. If you want to have breakfast, suppose you want to have a boiled egg or something, so you need to take at least 12 hours off for your schedule. Put that a day prior for boiling, then at least 12 hours, then it's edible to eat and all. And you also need to be prepared for an occasional beer attack and all. So in these kind of situations in the Dras and all, we used to leave our whatever, wherever the ration was dumped and all, we used to keep it open. If it wants to come and eat it, we used to allow it to eat it because otherwise it destroys. So that's the kind of a situation that you're into. Now coming on to the here in the lockdown, yes. Can I practice a routine? Yes, I can practice a routine. Can I learn new skills? Yes, I can learn new skills. So this was the perspective thing. Now I would like to move on to the reinventing part of it. That I said, we will all have to reinvent. The world will have to reinvent, or we will have to adapt after the reinvention. It's like the Generation Y. You know, Generation Y is from 1980s to 94. The Generation Z is from 97 to 2010. So Y is used to more of the globalizations and everything, globalization and everything. Z is used to more social mobility, networks and all those, social networks and all. So it's good that they have seen the real world and not been in the artificial thing. They have experienced both the global financial crisis as well as the COVID. And a new thing would be like the comfort of, as in the presence of others. It might get replaced by greater comfort in the absence. There'll be a new form of patriotism, a new phase, wherein all these frontline workers like the doctors, pharmacists, nurses, teachers, the neighborhood shops, and all these guys, they will become the new face of patriotism. There'll be new substantial investments in the health and the public services. And coming to faith. Now, faith has always dealt with the challenge under adverse condition. But COVID has brought a new way to looking at faith. Now, how would I describe it as? Now, religious beliefs are not going to be erased overnight, but there will be a new business as usual for them. For example, in the 14th century, when the plague came up, a lot of religious leaders said that plague has come up because it is the God's punishment for the man's sinful ways and all. Initially, people believed in it, but after the plague accentuated, people started believing in God, but their belief in the religious hierarchy has actually went off. And that brought in a lot of reforms and all in Europe and all. Second thing is, if you see the churches, mosques, and all of them moving online as an online discourse and everything. So this generation will actually see that when the religion is more to do with the traditions. Religion is more to do with attending masses in churches on Sundays. It's moving away from buildings and everything. The third thing is religion binds communities. We all agree with it. When it binds communities with the religious ceremonies, what we do whenever now religious ceremonies are happening, we keep away our mobile phones and everything away. With this moving online, there may be a change in the behavior. So if the level of effort required for the religious ceremonies to participate in religious ceremonies goes down, commitment may go weaker towards it. The first casualty of all these things may be the faith healers, because they were nowhere to be seen during the COVID crisis. So that's how I would like to sum the faith thing. Now the other things. There will be more cooking at home than eating out. Frugality will be back in the retail spending. The bigger ones would be postponed and all. Trust factor will play a major role. In between the companies and banks, companies and vendors, there will be a big thing. There will be a lot of economic backlash against the China and all. Entertainment would move home. The local retail store, as I said, they will become the new face of patriotism and all. So they would probably attract more people than the malls and the supermarkets and all. Luxury shopping, which used to happen while you are traveling abroad and all, will happen mostly domestic. And most of them will also go online. As of now, they are online to make their presence felt. But the sales part is a very minuscule of the online one. So that will also start happening. In the third part, we'll cover the new opportunities. By covering the new opportunities, one would be the rise in the IT budgets, because you see the scenario has come in work from home and all those things. So there'll be a rise in the IT budget of all the companies. India at present has the data around 120 data centers. So data center and telecom equipment business would increase. Digital universe opportunity like smart devices, virtual reality, online advertising and everything, this would go up. In the artificial intelligence and all, like the data, as in the chip manufacturers, the hardware makers, the cloud and infrastructure, the AI algorithm makers, the building block makers, the enterprise solutions. This will all see a huge increase. Cybersecurity. Although when I'm saying rise in the IT budgets and everything, cybersecurity will also be a domain that will be thoroughly looked into. That also brings in called cyber threat that I will cover towards the end of it. We'll see more investments in water treatment, robotics and all. Now, when I say robotics, there's a thing called like socially assistive robots that these guys, as in like Heriot-Watt University is making along with Edinburgh. That will be used for geriatrics and all, for old people care and all. Similarly, a lot of things like the Alexa, so there's one more, Alana, those will all come up. Emergence of telemedicine. Now, telemedicine will also see new changes because there are new guidelines that have come on 25th March. So the registered medical practitioner can follow it because of the huge distances in India and all. As of now, it is just a guideline, it's not an act. There will be revival of parks in all the cities and all. That means the people would like to work out more, go out, in open spaces and everything. Then in terms of the education business, and you see, there will be acceptance of online education will see an increase, acceptance. And online education will also get into a little bit of more transformation in terms of a blend of online, campus, live internships. It'll be a mix. Now, if the campus component cannot be done because a lot of universities are not too sure when they'll open up the campuses, they can probably outsource it to any convention center in a hotel and all. That can be the campus part of it. Rise in transnational education. Now, transnational education is a very different game, because why it will rise is because most of the students who go abroad and study in the international destinations are mainly from China, and then comes India, and then comes the other countries and all. Now the Chinese students actually make up quite a lot of, as in almost like approximately 5 lakh students who go abroad, study, and then come back and all. Transnational education is an education wherein half of it can happen in the home country and half of it can happen there. 75% can happen in the home country, 25 can happen there. Everything can happen in the home country. Nothing has to happen in the destination university campus and all. So it can be a mix of transnational. It can be flying teachers as well, but there will be huge increase in the tie-ups because now with this corona, the autumn intake and everything is pushed ahead. Not many students are going for it. In the autumn intakes, now a lot of Chinese and Indian students also take a pre-English course. That can happen online, but the actual portion cannot happen online. So if it is pushed ahead, then the universities have to make up with for the money part, as in the cash flow and all. That's when they will see more tie-ups coming in from the developing nations and all. Recognition of prior learning certifications. Now, this is one certification. If you have studied something, so government gives formal certification to recognize your prior learning, that will see a jump because the informal, this is one of the ways to bind the people, keep it there, bind this RPL along with your performance management systems and all, and then you can hold on to the informal sector employees. Hiring in the IT sectors generally would shift to skills, and more apprenticeship jobs will come up. Now coming on to this portion of it, the armed forces, the Indian armed forces, what are they doing? They launched Operation Namaste. They were a part of evacuations, quarantine, managing the quarantine centers. Most of the military hospitals have been kept ready. India is ready to help the SAARC nations, so teams have been kept ready. Samples have been flown every day. Medical load is being flown to the like Maldives, Nepal, and China. So for all the other Indian states also it is being done. DRDO has developed a sanitizer. It is in the process of developing a multi-patient ventilator, backpack area sanitization equipment and all. So all these things, cantonment boards on its part, like the added institutions which are like, they're keeping guest houses and the other places ready in case they come up with many patients. Naval ships are kept ready. Defense trains are also kept ready to be used as the isolation base and all. Now coming on to the national security portion. Now this security portion was a little, because many things are not still clear, as in how will it affect the national security, as in the COVID or the corona, right? Hybrid warfare. Now when we see the warfare front, what is actually hybrid warfare is? It's a very low cost, high return warfare. A lot of people are still in the denial of it. Some people do accept the hybrid warfare. It's a low cost, it's a very high return. The aim is actually not to win, it's to destabilize. A lot of information warfare is used in it. A lot of state actors are a part of it. And a lot of the out-of-state actors actually participate as in indirect through the non-state actors and all. So how it functions, it's a new form. So you create a perception that the non-state actors are fighting for a cause. So you create that perception around. So like all those the groups and all, they're kind of doing, they're working towards a cause and all. Second is the criminals. Today's criminals are tomorrow's terrorists in those places. So they are used to coerce people to not to resist this movement. That is the second thing. Third thing is anyone who's resisting this armed movement and all, they are being portrayed as against the principle of self-determination. Fourth is you erode the institutions of governance and educational institutions. So your hybrid warfare is done. Then you use a lot of information warfare. So what you do is you put into place that you have won everything, and a lot of misinformation that you can spread across. Like Pakistan has an agency like the ISPR, the Inter-Services Public Relations, which is in existence since 1949 and all. That has been doing a lot of information warfare. that portrays a lot of misinformation, that spreads a lot of information. So in a way, if you look at a situation, it can be looked from the lens of a hybrid warfare. It can also be looked at from the lens of a conventional warfare. People look into it different ways because depending on the manpower, the training, and everything, you can actually do a lot of stuff, and you can define the way you want. Cyber security. Now, India has 14% of the digital, as in the economy, 14% happens to the digital thing, and it can go up to 20%. We have around 120 data centers. We consume almost like 15 to 20 gigabytes per person per year. And we are also the third most attacked nation apart from the US and China and all. Our response time is also less. There are different agencies that work towards it. There is a National Center for National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Team. Then there's a Defense Special Division, Defense Cyber Agency, National Center for Cyber Coordination. Although all these agencies are there, they are coming up with a unified policy. They were supposed to come up in the month of May, and it's in the process. Because after the IT 2000 Act and all, then there is one more act which is in process, is the private data bill. I guess that is also being placed in the December, in the winter session. So that is also there. Now, uncertainty in certain situations, they create a lot of incentives to create divide and all. Now, when you have a lot of internally displaced people, huge unemployment, with lots of free time, this becomes a kind of a mix for agencies like ISPR to spread a lot of misinformation. Now, if all the countries start focusing on the pandemic and how to deal with it, it might give an opportunity to a lot of people to actually come up with things to attack. Training of troops, and how the army would perceive is the training of troops and will now happen in shifts, small number of troops each batch. Sanitization of the training equipment has to happen. So it will happen in small batches and all. Now, India has a acquisition program, which is a long-term integrated perception program. And then you have the necessity of the approvals and all. And then you have the RFP. So anything that is in the RFP stage will go through. But anything which has to pass that the LITT or anything which has to pass through the before the necessity stage, that we may get stuck, that may get delayed and all. Last year in 2019, India inducted the Apaches, Rafale, the K9 Vajras, then INS Arigat, nuclear submarines and all. Then one Agni 5 and all, which is yet to, as in it is being inducted, but it is yet to come up. So all these things, there are others which are lined up. These lined up one will depend on the stages that they are in. Anyone who's at an RFP and the other stages may go through. Anyone who's before that and still to be tabled with and still to be a part of the long-term integrated perceptive program will get a little bit delayed. Now coming to the new beginnings or the new normal that we have to maintain, is it like what you guys need to do is you establish and follow a proactive routine to manage your time optimally during the lockdown session. Then you maintain a daily team call routine. You formulate and lead online training sessions for your enhancing your team members' skill sets and all. To keep your team members engaged, you also discuss different business scenarios that you should generally, what happens, the scenario one, the lockdown is lifted up, the business, where we should pick it up, what are the things that we need to keep it ready, and all those things. You can pick up any online skill programs that you want as of now. Just remember to have a cup of tea in your balcony, in the sun, do some light exercises, keep yourself refreshed, interact with the elders, children, reconnect with your friends and all, and develop new skills like the cooking and the painting and all. So I have finished all the 5 points that I wanted to actually finish off. And the end is this quote. This much I have learned. Within this sorrow, there is grace. When we come closer to the things that break us down, we touch those things that also break us open. Thank you.
Dear Kevin, military clock precision, 30 minutes, 17 slides. You spoke like a Zen monk, as somebody rightly said, very nuanced. Now, there are two questions. One from Alok Shankar. Will there be any change in the structure and role of armed forces due to Corona? If so, what?
Well, as of now, the op namaste is to keep them ready in case the units that are in different states are in touch with the state authorities and all, in case they are needed to help the central armed forces and all. But as such, there will be no structural change, because if you see in the conventional warfare or the Sundarji doctrine or the cold start doctrine and all, we needed change, but that change was to be more agile, handle more conventional stuff as well as counterinsurgency stuff. But Corona, I don't think there will be much of structural change.
Next question is from Sunil Rajendran. The question is, the structural changes are already happening with the new CDS, and they will have a long-term plan of integrating all three services and building additional capabilities. But nuclear, biological, chemical warfare and readiness to counter may take more priority. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. I totally agree to it. When I was going through it, first is the tri-defenses portion. In the Sundarji doctrine, well all the generals believe in that, is more about the conventional warfare. When they did the Op Parakram and all those things, they actually realized that a lot of time was actually getting lost in moving the holding formations and the attack formations and the strike corps, basically. So the idea was like the holding formations will form, and then the tri services along with the artillery and the air force will soften, and then the strike corps will go through. So that was not holding too much ground because India was not reacting. It was not reacting to too much of the things that had happened in the past. But going ahead, it has been said that the cold start doctrine, they will start adopting to it. That means they will have some kind of an IBG, the independent battle groups. They will combine stuff and will make it more agile, relational maneuver and all those things. But the discussion started in 2017, but yes, it will take a long time for it to come to ground, because if you see, at one point it's a two-front war. Then there is counterinsurgency. At one portion, if you are saying that you want to do the IBG stuff, the other portion is still conventional. So it's still a lot many discussions are still going, but yes, the changes are taking place.
Okay. Alok Shankar has a follow-up question. If Corona will not change armed forces, why should other sectors change? Is it just a pause?
Why it would not change is because, see, ideally, in army, certain sections are trained for it. Not the entire army is trained for it. The rapid medical teams are trained for it. There are civilian army coordination is a set process which is practiced all the time. So that is there. Now, while in the things wherein there's a flood coming in or there's an earthquake and all, now we have our disaster management teams. So that, I guess, will take a little bit more time to shape up. So the army has to actually think that way, to actually involve technical stuff into it. As of now, it won't much change.
Okay. A question from Sandeep Mishra. He says, do we see any defense group coming up in future to tackle biological warfare?
Yes, it might.
Next question from Vijay Sarda. Is there a blueprint given to military R&D center? If yes, how is it decided? Time horizon?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Nikhil?
is there a blueprint given to military R&D center?
Mhm.
If yes, how is it decided the time horizon? He's asking, is there a blueprint?
Oh, yes. So while I was discussing the long-term integrated perception plan and all, so that the time plan is for 15 years. So right now the block that is going on is from 2012 to 2027. So whatever things you're buying, you should be ready till 2027.
Okay.
So similarly, the DRDOs, all the associated, the ordnance factory boards and all, similarly, they are also being tuned to this long-term plan. So they are also preparing for it. For example, if you see these slides, like the DRDO is preparing for the ventilators, DRDO is preparing for the area sanitizations and everything. So it was already there. It works independently.
Now the second from Vijay Sarda is, what was done in Kashmir? Closure of internet to stop misinformation. Couldn't that have happened all over India during this or future disaster problem? He's saying what happened in Kashmir when you close the internet service, could the same be done in India and all over India? What is your thoughts?
Well, if you see the internet lockdown and everything, Kashmir issue had a lot of history to it. And Sheikh Abdullah was there, 1975 and all. Then he formed the plebiscite front and the national conference and everything. Then 1977 he wanted to fight the election, and then the Congress brought him over, but then he again ditched Congress. 1977 he won. 1983 Farooq Abdullah won. So between that there were a lot of things of naming the lot of 2,500 villages, Islamic names, in migrating the Kashmiri Pandits out of the thing, the coining of the term Mukbirs, and then Maqbool Bhatt, JKLF emerging, the Armed Forces the Armed Forces Act coming in, the Gawadal, wherein 50 casualties happened. So, and 1987 rigged election. So all of this when happened, and that's the background of it. So when you say that the internet lockdown, all, yes, and it happened, and it happened because of the Article 371. It was taken away from it, and the 35A and all those things.
So his question is, if that could have been done in that case for Kashmir, in today's COVID thing, closure of internet to stop misinformation during future disaster problem and all, because lots of forwards and all come in. So he's extrapolating that. Is it possible?
Well, I think both are not connected actually. Both are not connected. That's why I said one has history to it, a lot of history to it.
Well, next question is from Harivardhan Kuna. In case of any biological attack, assuming COVID is one such, do we plan to integrate the health, civilian, security forces to complement the defense forces to fight in these situations?
Yes.
There is. Okay. Venu, India has started moving digital transaction. You think we'll be ready with cyber security processes?
Well, that's what I said. There's a policy that is coming up. It was supposed to come up in May 2020, wherein all these things of the different agencies, like from the CERT, the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Team, then the Cyber Coordination Committee, defends the cyber divisions, the Cyber Defense Agency. All these things will ideally be covered in it. It still not come out in the public domain.
There's a question from Ashwin Natarajan. What are the 3 lessons can corporates take from the Indian Army?
Well, most of the thing that we learn in the MBAs or in the management circles is actually what Army used to do. It is like if you ask me, the span of control is what the Facebook or the other people follow in the groups, as in how many people should be there, the motivation, the morale, the maneuvers, the strategies. All these things were given by Army.
Guys, if anybody wants to ask a question, the reason I have I put you all on mute is because the earlier sessions, it was becoming a little difficult to handle. because everybody was talking at the same time. Maybe our CP foundation is at fault at times. So if anybody wants to ask a question themselves, they can just raise the hand, which says the raise hand button, and I will do that. So I mean, that's the only reason why I have unmuted on. Yeah, Pramurto, I'll unmute you. Yeah, Pramurto, go ahead.
Hi, Kev. I also wanted to ask you about what do you see as the future of online education that you have been driving for a number of years across India?
Well, the future of the online education is, I guess now with this COVID, the acceptance things will go up. A lot of when you actually do the online education, whether it is a blend of the online, offline, or the internships are done online or internships are done in campus or live projects. Or what I see is acceptance will go up. When you actually do an online course, people start comparing it with the distance education and all. So the human resources now will be more empathetic towards people who are doing the online courses. If the acceptance goes up, yes, they will see different forms of online courses coming up.
Hi, this is Alok here. And it was more of a thought, so to say, that almost everywhere people are saying, post-COVID things are changing, and we're all talking about automation. We're all talking about working from home. We're all talking about robotics. We're all talking about, the what should I say, the fall in the service industry. I was just wondering, how will we generate jobs to really keep our large population gainfully employed? That's something that has been troubling me ever since we've gone into a lockdown. That are we going to be in a huge mess because everything seems to be digital, everything seems to be home, and everything seems to be automation. So how do we generate jobs really?
Well, sir, it's a good question. What I can see is enhancing skills. I don't know if at different levels, enhancing skills can be actually thought of. And in generating jobs, quite a vast topic. I may not be able to touch it that much. Because in the skilling sector, if you see, the government is actually putting in a lot of money, right, from the UDAN to the Pradhan Mantri's Kaushal Vikas Yojana and all. I guess the informal sector is being taken care of. The new job requirements that are yet to come up, we will all have to wait and watch.
Hi, this is Rishindra here. Thanks a lot. It was great to know all of this stuff. My question is that for all the defense spending that we do, India is still essentially a very poor country.
Yes.
So is there a balance at all between our need for extensive defense spending vis-a-vis the welfare cost of people? I mean, what's the ideal or the optimum balance between these two, if at all there is any?
I mean, as a developing nation and having 29 states, different languages, faced with problems like the counterinsurgency, conventional war at two fronts, defense budget need to be like India. For example, if you compare it with China is like the 5 times more economy. China's budget is 3.5 times of India's defense budget. India's defense budget at the moment is around 66 billion. But out of that, if you look into, the equipment is just 24-25%. The balance portion is the balance 24% is for the pensions and all those things. And the bigger chunk is for actually maintenance of equipment and pay and allowances and all those things for all the three forces. So if you see the budget, yeah, it will look big. But if you see the threat that is faced, it's comparable. And if you see what of the budget actually goes into enhancing the capabilities is just 20 to 24%.
Kevin, I want to ask a question. You have talked about the Army man's perspective, and now you are into training, into franchise development of education, correct? Am I right? Is that correct? Yeah. So how is that transition been from an Army man at Dras at -60 to 37 degrees at Bombay temperature? In mental, I mean, how did you cope up with it? And what did you learn, and what difficulties you faced, both in the transition?
So in the transition, if you see, the transition part is like both the places. See, the hard work is the lowest common denominator at both the places. As per se, relationship works at both the ends. Relationship with your vendors, with your clients, with your customers, and all those things that work at both the ends. Army as an organization, you tend to look into different, as in you look into it a very one-dimensional stuff. As in it is being said, this is the doctrine, this is what is being followed, and this is what we have to do. And you don't have to look into any other aspects of it while you are there. While you're in the corporate, you need to. It's like in the corporate, if the Q1 targets are not met, I can take it ahead in the next quarter. But in the Army, I can't take it ahead. Second, if I make a mistake in the corporate, I can still accept it and go forward and probably try to rectify it. In the Army, you can't answer that to the widows and the orphans. That's the start. When I said relationship, at both the ends have to be properly maintained. Hard work is, as I said, the lowest common denominator.
Any other question? Or if anybody wants to give their thought, just raise your hand, because I can unmute all, but then it will become too difficult to manage. I hope you understand. Or should I unmute you all and you all will put your thoughts? I will try that for once. So I'm unmuting all, but so all are unmuted. So anybody wants to ask a question?
It's too jumbled.
Exactly. So I better go to mute all, and if anybody wants it, there's a question. Okay. Blaze, you want to ask something? One second. Being very brave. So one second. Anybody has a question? Blaze, you want to?
I just wanted to say you are very brave to unmute all. I think your Kevin has rubbing off on you.
No, not that, because there are still 10 minutes, because Kevin has finished his questions, I mean, his presentation in 30 minutes. That's why. I'll just mute you. Ravindra Rappelli. Yeah, Ravindra, go ahead.
Hi, Kevin. I think my question was, after post-COVID, what kind of industries you'd see a big jump in its trajectory, and what industry will really have to reinvent themselves? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what I covered in this, as I said, most of the industries that are into probably the data center or telecom or AI, robotics, smart devices, virtual reality, all these, or anyone who's engaged with probably providing any kind of data services to the AI firms and all, because AI heavily relies on data to predict the outcomes and also all these industries.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. So yeah, so I missed it.
Just one sec. Yeah, Blaze has a question. I'll just unmute him. Blaze, yeah.
Hi. Currently we are grappling with this post-COVID, you can say we've started, but there are so many new rules, for example, social distancing and all. How do you think the army is going to create or work with such rules? You know, you are in a confined space, in a tank, in a submarine. How would social distancing and all work over there on your marches? Everything is close by. You have to work in close proximity. So with this threat, how do you see anything happening or different in the army?
Well, sir, that's a really nice question. What army does is when this thing came up and when they were actually launching out the Op Namaste. So what they did was actually separating out the people who had gone on vacation. If they are on vacation, they are extending the vacation. If the people's vacations were over and by the time they were coming back to the units, their own units and all, there was a separate quarantine zone. They were only secluded to that. In the quarantine zone as well, they are distributing them in the small batches. So when you are actually going for the washrooms or anything, so they're batches certain time. Then only they can go. The second thing is all the war games, any kind of a joint exercise and everything is called off as of now. Everything is called off. The third thing is in terms of the trainings, like I said, because Army's trainings are quite equipment. The involvement of equipment is small. So sanitization of the equipment is also a big thing. So again, dividing them into the small batches, getting the trainings done, then again sanitizing the equipment, then again getting the things done. As of now, then again passing on the rules like 50% of the manpower should be here, 50% should be in the barracks at times. Certain ranks should be in office, certain ranks should not be in office at this time. That's how they are managing at the moment. They're all learning as of now.
There's a question from Nishant Gambani. How about the investors from Chinese companies? Will India apply any restrictions on that?
I think in the newspapers today, there were a lot of restrictions, as in the Chinese investments. The government had put some restrictions on it.
Prerit Su, go ahead.
Kevin, it was a great presentation, and I liked the mix which you did with your experience with the opportunities, new areas. So you penned it out right. I just have one question. Considering the influence of the international security, economic alliances, where do you see this, defense exports or defense imports, this kind of an ecosystem working out? Meaning, trade in defense equipments. So there may be net out on certain things from India to certain countries with Africa and even nearby SAARC zones. And like we see in US also, it's supplying torpedoes and all. So I know it's a very defense-based question, but thought of asking you, since defense industry is something which usually booms up in a deep recession. So getting some of your thoughts will be helpful.
Actually, it is, if you see in this Corona scenario also, India got around 16,000 LMGs from Israel. So as in if it falls in the 2012 and 2027, that 15 years long-term integrated perspective plan, and the necessity has already been okayed and all. Like same way in the other countries as well, this is going as in business as usual, because it is more than the defense. It is more quasi-political kind of thing, because like the India would be slated to buy reconnaissance aircraft from US under the US defense military program. So similar way, it has a tie-up with Korea for the K9 Vajras. Similar way is with Israel's, because the Rafale and everything has come up with Israeli attachments. I guess it's business as usual, depending on what stays there.
There's a question here from Rashindra. We can keep here, this will be the last question, it's 5 o'clock. So we can keep hearing rumors about corruption in defense procurement, even for small ticket items, not just big purchases like aircraft and guns. Your thoughts around this, please. defense corruption in defense purchase, in short.
I think if you see the defense, the smaller items like the equipments that are needed in high altitude and all, that is done at the brigade level or maybe the div level and all. And that's not, doesn't go, the small items you can just purchase this. You don't need to ask anyone these days. So there's an army commander, special financial powers, you use it and you buy it. So you don't need to default small purchases. There is no corruption in it. The only thing is the protocol of the vendors, as in the 3 vendors, everything has to be followed as per the norms, as per that norms at that place and at that time and that location. Regarding the big things, yeah, there are committees to it. It passes through many stages. Even if like the Airbus has been signed like 2 years back, it is still to see the light of the day. So it takes its own due process.
Kevin, thank you very much for a very nice, lucid, Zen-like presentation. I'll repeat the word. Very nice, very measured. And it was very nice for us to understand what you have gone through and how you have transcended to the other, you have moved to the corporate sector. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
and a big thanks before I forget to Sandeep Ghate, because he was the person who put it on the Mumbai group that Kevin should have spoken. So thanks to him, he had logged on, but then I think so couldn't get. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, everyone.